Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Enhancing the Human Experience, the podcast designed to help you get the most out of your business and your life. I'm really excited today. A good friend of ours introduced me to Mike O'Leary, and Mike is a businessman, a self-made millionaire, an author, and has a very colorful past and a lot of wisdom inside of him. And our good friend, a mutual friend, introduced me to him and has set up this interview, and I'm really excited. Mike, welcome to the show.
Joel, thank you very much, and I'm very proud to be in this position right now. I started out about 89 years ago. I'll be 90 next year. I'll be 90 years old, and I've learned a lot along this path, and I've vowed to myself to learn and also to work hard. And I'm going to write a book someday about how to become a millionaire for minimum wage.
I'd love to see it.
And this is very, very, very simple. It's real. It's accurate. And I've been very careful to become who I am today.
Yeah.
It's been a hard, long trail, but I'm happy with it. I've done what I promised to do as a boy. And when I was a boy, I promised to my mama, when she first found me, when I was 14 years old, I lost her. Mm-hmm. She had to leave the depths of the depression. She couldn't take care of me, so she left me with my grandparents.
Talk about that. When you shared a little bit of your story with how your mama came back and found you. Talk about your childhood growing up, and give us a sense of how you grew up as a kid and your mama found you.
Well, mama had to leave me with my grandparents, and I longed for her. I wondered why my mama wasn't with me. My grandparents held me and nurtured me and took care of me for 6 years, from an infant child. But I do remember my mama leaving me with daycare centers, and I was very disturbed. I screamed bloody murder when she'd take me to a daycare, and I was less than a year old, and I remember that just as clear as yesterday. But I remember a lot of things in life that most people don't remember. But I remember when I was born, and people say that's ridiculous. No, I do remember when I was born.
You do?
I had a little spot. There was a little spot of light, and that little spot of light kept growing. And it grew and grew and grew until it consumed me, that light. And it scared the living daylights out of me. So I went on for years wondering what that dream, what is that dream? That was me coming into life.
Really? As
a baby, yes. And I remember that. So I believe light is life and dark is death. And there's many things that I've studied and learned, that the black holes in the universe are death. There's negative. There's no life in a black hole. And I believe that when my light will go out, my light someday now, in the near future, will go out, but I'm looking forward to come back again. My life will come back in the light again. It's a cycle. Everything in life is a cycle. It comes and goes. Everything is a cycle. The women have their cycle and men have theirs. So anyway, as a boy, I went to the ranch, and they took me to the ranch, and I grew up there, and my aunt was a good Catholic Christian. She was like grandma, but she was my grandpa's sister. And so they were my grandparents. And every Sunday, without failure, we went to church. And I had to listen to the Catholic Domina Secula Amen and Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, not our death. I could recite it, and he speak Latin, but I can't speak it. I can't recite that because I didn't know what he was mumbling about.
Yeah.
But anyway, it didn't mean much to me other than the fact that it was decent. They were good people. They were kind and loving people.
Now, is this your father's family or your mom's?
This is my father's sister.
Okay.
And his father, my grandpa. And it was an interesting time. I spent 6 years, almost 7 years there. They left me there until I was a school age time. And so I went from a Christian life to an atheist life. And my father was a communist, card-carrying atheist. And he believed in Karl Marx and the dialectic. And he preached it every day. Scripts from the Bible, from the communist what do you
the
call
manifesto?
it? Manifesto, yes. And so even after I grew up, that remained in my head, and the Christian thing remained in my head. And I favored the Christian people. I just felt that they were more positive than negative. And I believe, since I got a job as an electrician with the Southern California Edison Company in California, and I learned a lot about electricity. And I know that you can't complete a circuit without a positive and a negative. And we are actually an electrical system, the human being. So we have a positive and negative also, and we live off of that. And the song says, our theme song says, you've got to accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, not mess with the best or in between. Well, that's a good idea. That was a good song. It's close, but it's not accurate. You can't do away with the negative. You can't eliminate it. It's going to hang around with you whether you like it or not.
I've heard that
and
before.
It's going to drive you right up the tree, but you've got to learn to control it. And if you don't, it'll destroy you. And that's where we are in this country. We're practicing and playing too much with the negative, and we're giving it too much rope because it's going to hang us.
Yeah. Well, it seems like that's almost the history of the human condition, is that cycling from positive to negative, from positive to negative, and crashing and rebirth.
And it takes countries down. It took Japan down. It took Germany down. That's what made us a great country, taking those people down because they were of the devil. And it's a figure of speech, but it's accurate. It's you could take it as truth if you want to, or you could just take it as it's there and we can't change it. So the Roman Empire failed because of sodomy, which is infidelity, and that took the Roman Empire down, and corruption. And we're following the same footsteps.
We really are, and that's just I look at that as just like the bad within us. Like you said, you water the good seed or the bad seed, the positive or the negative.
Right. But we want to drift away from that. We want to concentrate more on the positive. And if we're going to use the negative, let it enhance the positive, not destroy it. That's important. That's extremely important. If you have to use the negative, I was a boxer, and I never was mean about it. It was a sport. And I never hurt people if I knock them down. I wouldn't just want to kick them or hurt them. I'd help them up, And I've fought with many men that would beg me to take it easy, Mike. Don't. And I was we were champions, my brothers.
I read that in your book here.
We were champions. We fought all through the United States. In the Midwest, brother was a professional champion, Patty O'Leary. I was an amateur. I never made it to pros, and I'm glad I didn't because my brains are damaged enough. And I think maybe a blow to the head sometimes helps people.
Yeah.
Kind of a disconnect, and then you can reconnect.
Reconnect, yeah.
So I try to reconnect properly instead of having all this negative stuff take me down. I want to go up in life. I want to keep the positive in control. I want to keep the negative under control. And I don't want things to get out of control. And I work hard for that. Many times when I was a boy and I had to leave the ranch and go to live with my father and live with a bunch of communists, I got upset because they're mean.
Talk about that experience. So were you 7? You say you were 7?
About 7 years old. I just started kindergarten late. And I hated it. I had to wear knicker pants and
school
show my
clothes.
legs.
You mean you hated the
I used to wear
conformity?
my overalls on the ranch.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to school. I got to go looking like a sissy, and I didn't like that. And I didn't like school. I didn't want to be there. So I just run away. And they got to where they grabbed me when I went out the door, and I'd just grab me and swing me in the air.
You were a free spirit.
And they turned me right around, sent me back in class again.
How long did it take before you finally said, all right, I'll conform here?
I don't know. It must take us half a dozen times of them catching me and making me go back into class and sit down and behave myself. But it wasn't easy. I finally conformed, but I never did well in school. I didn't want to be there. Not clear. I stuck it out till high school. I was 20 years old by the time I could get a diploma.
Okay.
But I had to go to summer school. I had to struggle. Primarily because I was hit in the head so many times
Yeah.
from the boxing thing.
Yeah. Oh,
And
so you boxed as a young. When did you start boxing?
From a child.
Oh, really? So
we
just a small
had
boy.
the gloves on. We were taught to fight when we were. My father has told us, as a communist, he said, we live in a jungle. And to survive in a jungle, you got to be fit. It's survival of the fittest. That's part of the Communist Manifesto.
Yeah.
And he yapped that constantly. So he put us in the ring. And his mistake was he put me in the ring with men as a boy. I remember fighting a man when I was 12 years old.
You're kidding.
And he knocked my brains out. All I can remember is stars. And this affected me when I was in school. I didn't have the memory. I still don't have the memory that a normal person has. My sister was never hit in the head the way I was. And she went on to be a college professor. And she'd have done well on that TV show that they've got. What's the name of
Jeopardy?
it? Jeopardy, yes. She would have been a whiz on that show. But I can't. I answer maybe two out of each. I can answer maybe two out of the whole series of questions. I'm a complete dummy when it comes.
So your father just said, "Here, trial by fire. Get in there and
you get in there and battle."
burn.
And I was fighting with my brothers. We were fighting together. And I asked
read
my
that in
dad.
your
I says,
book.
"Why are you letting us fight together this way? Why don't we be peaceful with each other? Why do we have to fight each other?" He says, "Because as long as you're fighting, you're staying off my back."
Oh, so he was more of getting you out of the way for him.
That
to do
was
his
that was
stuff.
tying us up where we wouldn't. So my brothers and I, we plotted to kill him.
Did you?
Yes,
He was
My-
a bad guy. Well, like I
My
said, I
brother
read a lot
Pat,
about
the
you.
boxer, and we plotted. We were sparring partners and fought all the time. But we did it out of orneriness and out of fun and out of just spite.
Yeah, brothers fight like that, but he encouraged that sort of stuff.
Yes, he
it sounds
did.
like.
He come home one day from work with his uniform. He was a guard for the government. He come home and he saw us fighting in the yard, me and Pat. Pat and I. Well, anyway,
Yeah.
we battered, beat on. We were beating on each other. We were totally exhausted when he finally come home. We couldn't hardly hold our arms up. So we just stopped and put our arms down and tongues hanging out, panting. And he got up on the porch and looked back and he says, "What'd you quit for?" Because we were tired. We didn't want to fight anymore. He says, "Go on, keep fighting, get it out of your system." And he walked back and went in the house. So we just decided to quit. We just decided, well, we were neither one of us are going to win this fight.
Yeah.
Because I can't knock him out. He can't knock me out.
So he
just quit.
He just kind of gave it up.
So that was one of the childhood things is my life with my parents. And I didn't feel bad at all when my mama showed up and asked me to go with her.
So
to
from
California.
seven to what
7
time
to
did you live with your
14.
dad? 7 to 14
I spent
with your
7
dad.
years with my father.
And it sounds like
And
it
my
wasn't a
brothers
pleasant
and-
experience.
Huh?
Was it all unpleasant, or were there?
No. We had a lot of good times together.
Okay.
And we used to box the exhibition bouts in Washington, D.C.
Oh, really?
And my brothers and I were the champions. So we were the better fighters. So we were on the ticket. We were doing the boxing. And during the Depression, the tail end of it, we were treated like royalty. And we loved it. And it was fun.
I
And
bet.
we got to stuff our tummies full, because they had goodies. And food was hard to come by in those days, back in the late 30s.
I can imagine.
In the early 40s, before the war. Food was hard to come by. And my father had 9 children. And he kept himself in poverty. And then he went to the government for help. Because he thought President Roosevelt was great, a wonderful man.
I'm sure.
Well, he started the welfare system.
Yeah.
Roosevelt started the welfare
Yeah, I
system.
know.
And now it's blown completely out of control.
Yeah.
Now it's just he just created parasites and people that are just mooching freeloaders off of the government.
Yeah.
And our system is just spoiled rotten.
It really
with
is.
so many people that are living off of the federal government.
Yeah.
We need to get the lead out. Look at all these fires we're having. Well, get those prisoners up there that we've got, these lazy bums that are on welfare. Get them up, clean up our forests. And let's get this brush and this trash and stuff out of there. Oh, no, don't do that. It disturbs the habitat. Ridiculous. What do you think fires do to the habitat? There's nothing left but charred wood. And look at the lumber we're losing in these forest fires. This is insanity.
Yeah.
This is not only stupid, it's to insanity. I want to write a book, Stupid to Insanity.
That's a great title.
This is one of them.
Yeah.
This is one of the cases. And we were legalizing too much negatives. Too many negatives are being
We really are. The snowball is kind of growing and growing.
It's terrible. Mm-hmm. Look at, they're trying to legalize drugs. They're putting all kinds of drugs in our medications. They're turning people into drug addicts.
Yeah.
And divide and control. These crazy unions that are out there that are communist affiliated. I'm not going to name them because I don't want them to put a hit out on me.
Yeah, no kidding. So
they're powerful.
They are. So from 7 to 14, you're with your dad. So it sounds like he taught you some positive stuff too.
He was not only, listen, he knew right from wrong. He would argue, that there was no God or there's no right or wrong. And he asked me one day, do you believe in God? And I hesitated. And I said, I was about to stick my neck in that noose. He said, do you believe in God? When I was a young man, I was probably 17, 16, 18, long enough to talk back. But I said, I hesitate to say anything. But he says to me, do you believe in God? I says, let me ask you, you ask me a question, let me ask you a question, and your answer will be answer my question, your question to me. So you answer my question. Now, I knew he believed in this word. So I hit him with it. I says, do you believe in the word good? And he always, when we did the right thing and a good thing, he said, good boy, good boy. And I was going to bring that up. I says, do you believe in the word good? He says, yes, I believe in the word good. I says, Pop, just take a zero and drop it out of that word good. Just drop one zero out, push it together. You got the word God. Just leave it at that. Let's let it forget about it. Let's forget it, leave it there. He just walked away. He
Really?
kind of mumbled smart aleck or something like that.
So you had a sense that he did know right from wrong, good for bad.
Oh, he did, definitely. He knew it right from, absolutely. He told us not to smoke. Do not smoke. He puffed on a cigarette all day long, one off of the other, never lit a cigarette, only once during the day. And he smoked off of that cigarette, one cigarette off the other.
Wow.
All day long. He had a cigarette in his hand and a can of beer in the other hand.
Wow.
All day long. And at the end of the day, he was so drunk he couldn't hardly stand up.
Oh, I'll bet.
And he's meaner than a snake. He knew right from wrong. He wouldn't let us do it because you won't be at your best in that ring. You've got to be at your best or you're going to get whipped. He says, you don't waste any energy. You wouldn't even let us involve ourselves when we got older in sex. He says, you leave that sex alone because that's going to drain you some of your strength. You're going to need every ounce of strength in that ring. No cigarettes, no alcohol, and no sex. So you get in that ring, I want you to be in your top shape. And he made us run for miles. We lived in Denver. We had to run up and back and forth to Lookout Mountain. We run up that mountain to get endurance, to get that ring and bang away for 3 minutes, for three rounds in an amateur, and 5 to 10 rounds in the pro fighting.
So you were traveling. If you're back in D.C. fighting, you were traveling from Denver all around the country. Fighting?
Well, we started out. We started out in the Midwest. We were Midwestern people. I was born in Omaha. And my grandfather was in Colorado, just north of Denver. And Pop got a job on the East Coast in the Bureau of Engraving and Printing as a guard for the government because he begged President Roosevelt to give him a job because he was starving, his family was starving, and they needed clothes. He couldn't buy them clothes. And we'd go to the relief station after Roosevelt started the relief programs, and he'd have us cry. And he'd have us in rags, and he'd say, tell them you're hungry and you need clothes. So we went home with our arms loaded with blankets and clothes, and we got from the relief station that Roosevelt started.
Yeah.
So the president of the administration gave him a job in Washington, D.C., But they didn't know that he was a card-carrying communist.
So he'd been a card-carrying communist for
all his life.
Oh, he was since
all
a
his
boy.
life. He had an uncle, or the great uncle of mine, or something, that took him under his arm, and he was a communist. One of his families.
Yeah. Now, was that in the era of the McCarthy era when they
Yes, absolutely. He went to work at the Bureau and Printing in Washington, and we stayed there for a few years. And we lived in Maryland, and we picked wild grapes and wild strawberries and killed snakes along the Potomac River. And then he got a transfer because he wanted to be close to his father's ranch, which is 3 sections north of Denver. And so he got a transfer back to Denver. So we were fighting all through this. And then I moved to California, and then I was boxing in San Francisco at the Brown Palace Hotel. And I got knocked out there.
Did you?
I'm not ashamed of it. I got knocked on my backside. But I got back up, and I was all right. But I didn't win all my fights, but won.
You obviously were
I
pretty
won
good.
most of them. I won the important ones.
Yeah.
And I've lost a few. But
Right.
You're not going to be much of a person if you don't go through life. You win from your
There's
losses.
always someone bigger,
you learn
meaner,
from
and
losses,
tougher, right?
Learning comes from losing.
Yeah.
And if you don't lose once in a while, you're not going to learn much.
So he, I want you to tell your story of when your mom found you, because that's a great story. So at 14, where were you living when?
I was in Denver, and I was a street kid, and I'd been stealing downtown. She caught me when she met me, and she didn't know it. I didn't tell her that I was a little thief, and that was the way I was taught. From each according to his ability, to each according to his need. That's stealing. That's taking from those that have and giving to those that have not. Boo-hoo-hoo. I'm not going to buy into that. If I work for it, it's mine. This is a country of ownership. We don't live in a country that you own everything that I own. That's ridiculous. That's socialism. Level the playing field, baloney. Take that and go south with it, or go back to Germany or Russia or someplace else with it. This country is America, and we work for what we own. And I've got a lot of junk, but it's valuable. I'm an antique dealer.
Are you?
I become an auctioneer later in life, because when I was a boy, I had to go to the auctions with my grandpa. And I'd sit there and listen to the 35 and I had to listen to all that and say, man, that's neat. I want to do that when I get big. When I grow up, I'm going to be an auctioneer. And then, by golly, I did. When
That's
I grew
awesome.
up, when I bought me a little piece of property, little piece of commercial property, started an auction business. And it was fun. It was great. I fulfilled 20 years. I spent 20 years blabbing off of my big mouth. I did good.
It.
I could sell like good shape.
I bet you could.
I don't know what to get in for it. And we're 25 now, 30 now. If I had done a little bit enough, I get right here. What you could. Anyway, it was fun. I enjoyed it, and I stuck with it for a long, long time. But it got tiresome after a while.
I bet.
To use your lungs all day long, I can't do it anymore.
Oh, I can imagine it's very draining.
Well, I get cramps.
energetically.
My lungs actually get cramps in them.
Do they really?
The muscles in my chest get cramps. So I can sell for a few minutes, and then I can give an auctioneer relief. But to stand there and sell all day long like I used to.
Yeah.
I was a young fella then.
So 14, your mom finds you, you're in the streets, you're causing, sounds like you're up to no good.
Well, she told me if I take you home with me, and you meet your new dad, and it was her new husband, and he was an engineer, electrical engineer, and I learned a lot from him. And he helped me a lot in life. And if it wasn't for him, he gave me the seed money to buy a piece of property right now that I own, that is worth probably $1 million.
Is that in Boise here?
Yes.
Okay, great.
It's a story. I turned it into a storage business. But I've bought and sold a lot of properties before that one. And they told, my mama says, now, you promise me if I take you that you'll be a better person and you'll try to get ahead in life. And that stuck with me. And it's still with me.
Because you hadn't seen her from 0 to 14?
I had never seen her from 0 to 14.
But you knew when she came, you'd seen pictures and...
Well, not really. I didn't see many pictures of her.
So you didn't really know her at all.
I got pictures of her then. After that, later, yes, but I had no contact with her ever from the time I was born until I was 14.
So she finds you here in the street.
She finds me in the street, walked up to me like a stranger, and says, "I bet I know who you are." And she's a beautiful lady, just a beautiful person. She's blonde, Swede, blue-eyed. Now, that's another thing that's different that I had to go through and battle with. I was not an German-Irish. I was a Swede. I was my mama's kid. And I was blonde and blue-eyed like her. And the rest of them were all black Irish. They had dark hair, dark eyes. And I was an outsider. And I was treated like a stranger, like a foreigner. And I took blows to they slapped me every time. I had to duck when I went around through the family.
Oh, so just within your family you were...
Yeah, I was the enemy. I was the enemy of the family. They were jealous of me because I was healthy. I drank milk, and they were all bones and skinny because they were starving, And so I was healthy and husky and good looking, nice looking, and filled out. And they were skinny. They were all emaciated.
Yeah.
And they didn't like me because I didn't belong with that family. I was an outsider, an intruder into that family. So I had to adjust. And I had to just take what they dished out. And at that time, I was the youngest until my father remarried. And so I had to live with two families, my own family and my stepmother's family. Now, they're all still living, but they don't have anything to do with me because they're jealous of me.
Sure.
And my own family's gone. They are all passed away.
Oh, so your brother and your sister.
I'm the only one left from the original family.
Okay.
The only one. And
so you lived with your mom from 14 till when you probably left home, right?
20 years old.
20 years old.
I moved in with Mama when I first married.
What'd she teach you? What you said your dad was a communist, your mom was a Christian.
Yes.
Did you wipe the slate clean from... Well, obviously your father taught you some good lessons, but what did she teach you that contrasted with what your dad taught you? Good life lessons.
Well, decency. She didn't like me to run with low life. She come right out and says, "I don't want you to bring a low life in this house." And she caught me one day with a low life in the house. I mean, a grubby, dirty mouth, creepy punk, And I was drawn to those people. And it was hard for me to withdraw from them. And to this day, it's hard for me to turn anybody away. I feel for them. I want to help them if I can. And I get burned. I get burned helping wrong people. But you learn. After a while, you learn. You get in your mind, something tells you, if you get a good dog, that dog will tell you. And let that dog know what your principles are and what you want. I've had dogs that wouldn't let certain people in the yard. And it turned out that the dog was right. I have a police officer.
They have that sense, don't
was
they?
A great friend of mine, and he had a dog. And he said to me, "Mike, get you a dog and listen to your dog. Pay attention to that dog. If that dog doesn't let that person into your yard, then don't let the person into your yard. Listen to him." And he was right. A good dog, a smart, intelligent dog, will let you know if an individual is contrary to your principles. It sounds weird. It sounds
I've seen that.
But I've seen it. I've seen it over and over and over. And I go. And last night my dog was raising Cain, and I got up, and went out, and some people were coming in the dark. And my hours from 9 to 6, and they were coming in at 9, and 12 hours after I opened. And I asked him, I said, "You want me to work 12 hours a day for what little bit of rent you're paying here?" I said, "I'm not going to do it. You come around here again and you're history at this time of night."
Yeah.
And I told them, "You're going to be history if you do this again." And they apologized, and they took off and left. If you don't tell people where you stand, they'll just walk. You give them an inch, they take a mile.
Yeah, people.
You got to be careful when you're dealing with people. And they'll respect you for it if you're not too nasty about it.
Yeah. So you left at 20 and you went out to start building your fortune. And I want you to touch on what are some business lessons? Like you say, you've been a businessman. What would you share with people?
I would like. very definitely. And there's a little episode that took place when I was a young man. I couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 years old. I used to go into the country when I lived with my father. And I knew my grandpa was a carpenter. And I appreciated that. He built his own house. He built his own sheds. He put up corral poles. I watched him build. He was a builder. He had saws and mostly all hand tools. And by the way, I got some of those hand tools.
I bet.
But a lot of them have been stolen from me.
Yeah.
Because they were good name brand tools and they had good steel in them. But anyway, I went to the ranch. And what was the question again?
Well, I just wanted you to share some of your business knowledge, how you become rich.
There we go. We get back to it again. All right. I knew I wanted to be an auctioneer, but I didn't say anything. I went back in the country and saw this old man, and he was a recluse, and he was all by himself, and he had some fingers missing, and he was Jewish. We called him Isaacel, and he had an accent, and I still use that accent once in a while. Anyway, we used to visit, and he liked me because I was just a little kid. And I liked him because he was a wise old man. And he says, young man, what are you going to do when you grow up? And I says, I'm going to be a carpenter. Well, why do you want to be? Because my grandpa's a carpenter. Well, yeah, but you'll make a good living at that. That's an honorable living. But he says, could I tell you something and could you remember it? And I says, well, sure, go ahead. Learn to buy and sell, and you can own the world. But you could use your carpentry. Go ahead and do your carpenter thing, but in between, buy and sell. I grew up and did just exactly that.
That's great advice.
I did just exactly that. I was at the auctions on a regular basis because my pop took me to them, my grandpa took me to the auctions, and I says, I grow up, I'm going to be an auctioneer. So I took my advice to be an auctioneer, and I mixed it with the old Jewish theory to buy and sell, and I become a carpenter. So I carpentered for 25, 30 years. I'm still a carpenter. I still got a set of cabinets to build for my new residence. I've got to move my wife into a smaller unit.
Oh, you mentioned that, yeah.
To take care of her because she's come down with arthritis. I'm healthy as a horse.
You look at, yeah.
And I've got to go ahead and finish up this apartment, take her over there, and we'll live there where we're making an income.
Yeah.
Of course, I could sell out everything and just sit in a rocking chair and pass away, but I'm not going to do that.
No, you seem like you have a lot of interest in lots of
I have to.
drive.
I've got a lot of things to do in life yet. Yeah, I've got to keep using my mind instead of my back.
Yeah.
And I've got to drift away from the physical things, and that'll be the end of me. I know that, but that's okay.
It's the end of all of us.
It happens to everybody.
It happens to everybody.
It's going to happen to everybody. I'm just losing it physically.
Yeah.
I don't have the muscle mass that I used to have. It's turned to flab.
It happens.
It just and my muscles are cords now, and there's flab all around it.
Yeah.
It's terrible. But I used to have some muscle.
I bet you did.
I do have a little bit of muscle.
You sound like you're a tough
and I still
kid,
have a heavy bag that I work on.
Do you?
I sure do.
I bet you.
And I have fun. I enjoy it. And I've got some new tricks and new punches. And I know I wouldn't last long. I'd like to box Laila Ali.
I love it.
I'd like to set up a boxing match with Laila Ali, but I'd ask her under one condition. That she promised not to hurt me.
I bet she'd honor that.
Well, I wouldn't hurt her either.
Yeah.
I'd play with her. I'd just have fun with her. I want to start a sport called civilized boxing.
Well, what's that?
Civilized boxing would be tag boxing. You only tag your opponent.
Just a light touch.
You do not lay into a punch.
Okay.
You don't throw a knockout punch. If you knock your opponent out, you lose the fight.
Have you seen something like this
before?
before?
No, I've never seen a tag boxing, but I would love to start it.
Kind of like tag football.
Yes. You just tag your partner. And then you have a referee that just keeps tracking the tags.
I like
you
that
tag
idea.
them and you tap them. And it'd be faster. It would be fun. It would be civilized. And it would be educational. Because it would take a lot of science to find openings, make openings, and different angles, different punches, different approach.
Yeah.
And I'd enjoy it. I'd enjoy tag boxing. I've tried to get a couple of people to work with me on it, they won't do it.
Yeah, probably,
They
people
won't do it. And I wouldn't do it to hurt people. I'd do it to teach them.
Yeah.
How to avoid punches, teach them defense. That's the first thing in boxing. You teach defense. Learn the defense first. And I tell you the truth, I was a little too defensive in the ring. I like to move backwards. I like to move away from my opponents. I think Muhammad Ali was undoubtedly the greatest fighter
I've heard
all
that.
times. There's no doubt about it. He did float like a butterfly, and he could sting like a bee. And that's the way the O'Learys boxed.
Is it?
We were on the balls of our feet moving. Now, this is where my dad come in. He taught us to be in good shape and box properly, and make them miss, and then look for the openings and counterpunch. And there's all kinds of tricks to it. Don't telegraph. You punch them right where they're sitting, and you throw those punches. They don't see them coming. They don't.
Bet.
But if you telegraph, you're dead. I've been so many fights for people telegraph. They reach back like a girl. They're going to hit you.
Sure.
No, you don't reach back to throw a punch.
Sure.
You throw that punch right from where it sits. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
It sounds
pretty.
like you. It sounds like you were a kid that was really open and receptive to knowledge and wisdom. And most kids, it seems like, I know I wasn't that way to just soak it all in. I'm kind of in my own world. But you're taking advice from that Jewish gentleman,
the
your
old
dad.
people. I like the old. See, I was raised by old people. My grandparents raised me to 7, or pretty near, close to 7. Well, the Catholic Church says you give me a child till he's 7, and we'll have him. He'll be our child. He'll be our people. Well, I'm not a Catholic, but I do appreciate Christianity. I do appreciate it. This country wouldn't be what it is today without Christianity.
No, it really wouldn't. That was the basis. Yeah.
We've got to give Christianity a little credit and support.
Yeah.
And I'd like for them to support me in the Principal Assembly or the population, because the only thing I want out of this life is to see to it that we don't lose our democracy. That's what I want from life.
Yeah.
I don't want to see this country go down the tube like the Roman Empire did, and we're headed for there.
We are in a rough
There's
patch,
too many
aren't we?
infidels in this country, and the Muslims are right on that particular subject. They're not right the way they treat their women and the way they treat their children, but they're right when they see us. Maybe they're judging us by themselves. I don't know. But people tend to do that.
They do tend to do that,
They
right?
do tend to do that, and I'm afraid they're not a whole lot better than we are.
No.
So they don't need to stick their nose up in the air. But we could stop some of this infidelity.
Yeah.
Stop this crime, this criminal stuff. Stop this spread of drugs and alcohol. And I'll tell you what, we failed in the prohibition thing. It failed.
Okay, and what
Prohibition
sense?
failed.
Okay, sure, they let it back on.
We should go back and try it over again, just like we should go back and try over the Civil War. The Civil War wasn't necessary, but we fought it anyway, and a lot of American boys died on both sides. So if our leadership had just been patient enough and wise enough, look, the revolution for the mechanized world. This is what started the slavery thing. We needed workers, and they needed them up north. So if they freed them, they could come up north and work for the industries and stuff. The Industrial Revolution I'm talking about. Well, and then the communists moved in here on the Industrial Revolution. Now they've been creating all the problems they can.
Yeah.
And we needed those workers at that time.
So
But now they're letting open the borders to just anybody.
Yeah.
This is insanity.
Yeah.
Because we've got the enemies coming in here. We got enough enemies right here now. We don't need more enemies. We need people to put this country back together again, be what it used to be. And I agree with Trump. We need to go back and be great again.
Yeah, we really do.
We don't need the kind of change that we got previous to that, where we got a $20 trillion debt in 10 years. Or 8 years he was in office. It was a $10 trillion debt when he took office, and now when he left, it doubled.
Yeah, and we're spending the money. If we had the money, it'd be different. But we don't have any money.
Well,
to
I'll
spend,
tell you what,
know?
this minimum wage thing is out of control.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. If you're going to slap a minimum wage on the poor people, then let's slap a maximum wage on the rich people.
That's
and
a
if
good
you want to
point.
level the playing field, let's start right there. And that's not going to fly. That goodbye democracy in the free enterprise system. If we keep going in this direction to raise the wages here and not lower them, and they keep going up over here, I'll tell you what's behind that. My personal opinion. If we start carrying our money in a wheelbarrow instead of our back pocket, the government will be able to pay off its debt quicker.
Yeah.
Quicker. If they devaluate the dollar to dang near zero, then it'll be easy for them to pay off a $20 trillion debt.
Yeah, that's
because all I
true.
do is crank up the machines.
Yeah, that's true.
And put out, instead of $100 bills, put out $1 million bills.
Yeah.
Look how quick they could pay off the debt. If they could print $1 million of bills and send those bills all over the world like
Yeah.
they're doing now.
So speaking back to the millionaire, the wealth, I love your lesson that the Jewish gentleman gave you, buy and sell.
Yep.
What else
I've
has
done it.
helped you create the wealth that and the success that you've done?
Keep the positive in control. Keep the negative under control. Don't let things get out of control.
How do you do that? How
I
do you
did
keep
that
the
behind the
positive in
microphone
control?
when I was an auctioneer. I had 100 people out there that I had to keep under control. And I did it for 20 years. And I did it with diplomacy, intelligence, psychology.
Well, you know people. You know how to treat them.
I
how
can
to
read
make
their
them.
face. I can remember what they'll bid. I don't know where they go with them. I know what to do with them. You just learn to be a person and a human being. They learn you. You learn them. I had a good clientele. I had a lot of buyers. They come from all over my state to come to my auction and sell and buy from me, because I had a sense of humor. I'd humor them. You get a lot more money out of a person if you get them smiling and happy. You won't get money out of them for mad. They'll walk off. They'll leave.
It sounds like you gave them a great experience too.
Yeah.
Not only a good
They
product
liked my
and
sale.
service.
They were sad when I retired. And they wondered if I'd get back in business again. Well, I might a little bit. I've got a storage business now, and I'm getting an awful lot of abandoned merchandise.
Sure, I bet you. Yeah, that they have the reality TV shows where they have the storage units that are abandoned, and there's just a treasure chest in there. Right?
I'll go around to the storage people and tell them I'm going to start up a storage auction, and they'll fall in with me.
Yeah,
because I'll do them a good job. And the thing is, if you get a multitude of your sale's only as good as the sale you put together. You put together a good sale, you'll have a good sale. If you put together a poor sale or bad sale, you'll have poor crowd. But if you put together a super good, I've got tons of antiques and goodies that I feed into the auctions, and that's what they come for. They come for something that's unusual or different, and the general public to come. Look, if you could buy a mattress for $10, why would you go down and pay $200 for one?
good point.
If you want a bed frame or something, I'm sleeping right now in a $10 bed. A steel bed. It's solid. It's old, but it's in good shape.
Yeah, that stuff never wears out.
And I bought it for $10, and I bought the mattress for $10, and that's what I'm sleeping on now. And I can afford to go out here and pay $200 or $500 for a bed. It's ridiculous.
You're a frugal guy, too. That probably helps you create.
Absolutely. Frugality. People say I'm greedy. My family says I'm greedy. No, I'm not greedy. I'm frugal. And I help people. I give people loans. I lose money trying to help people. I've lost lots of money. My family tells everybody I'm a thief. No, I'm not a thief. I can take you through my home and through my warehouse, and I can show everything you look at. I can tell you who I bought it from and how much I paid for it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to take you through there and say I stole this and I stole that.
Yeah.
No, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, and
I don't have a record in downtown. Go to the police department and say, look him up. Look O'Leary up and see. I don't have a single record on that I'm a thief or that I've ever cheated anybody or stole from anybody. I got and those people that are accusing me are thieves. Mm-hmm. They're judging me by themselves. I'm not the way they are. So
Yeah.
that's the way people are. And you gotta let it run off you like a duck. Water runs off a duck.
Yeah.
You can't absorb all that. Just don't pay no attention to it. They're just jealous and they're hateful and mean spirited, and you just let it go by. And they're not happy.
Yeah.
They're not happy at all.
I want to touch on some of the information from your book before we wrap it up. Let's see, we're at about 45 minutes. In your book, you talk about this idea. I think it's great. What you project reflects.
Yes.
How'd you come up with that? What is that?
Absolutely. Well, you look at a mirror. Just look at a mirror. And if you stick your tongue out at that guy in the mirror, that guy in the mirror is going to stick his tongue right back at you. And it's a normal thing. In the boxing thing, he's trying to knock your head off. You're trying to knock his head off. What they project, you reflect. It's called karma. The Middle East call it karma. It floats around in the air, and I believe in it. I'm telling you that if there's spirits, there's people that say, my father, for instance, there's no such thing as a spirit. It doesn't exist. Spirits don't exist. God doesn't exist. Well, maybe you're right, but let me tell you something. If you do something, what's behind it? Well, you can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't see it, feel it, or anything else. If somebody comes at you in a certain way, then you respond. You respond to what is approaching you. Yeah. So you go after them the same as they're coming after you. And if somebody wants to hurt you or harm you, you don't want to harm them, but you at least put the brakes on them. You can say, don't go there. Don't you dare do that. I tell people, I had a man, a big heavyweight guy, tell me one day, he says, I'm going to knock your head off. His kids were vandalizing my property. I went up to talk to him, and he says to me, I'm going to take care of you. And I said, well, I don't think you better try it, but he's heavyweight, and I'm a lightweight. At that time, I was light, still skinny, Anyway, good shape, but he tried me. He threw a girl's punch at me, big old overhanded right. Well, I just went down to bend my knees. I could bend them then. I can't hardly bend them now. Yeah. But I just went down on my knees and just that left hook of mine. I'm a left-hander. I fight in the right-handed position. And he just threw that big old right hand, and I just went under it and just buried my left fist right in his belly. And he went, ooh. Well, what he projected, I reflected. But he didn't connect, and I did. Yeah. Because he didn't have the experience I had. He was a postman in the neighborhood. One day,
he was a big guy, but he hadn't boxed like you had.
No. One day he come by, and I had just been put in the hospital by two big guys, bad people. They were bar people. Yeah. They put me in the hospital. They battered me. Well, the big guy held me, and the little one battered me with a pipe.
Oh, you're kidding. In a street type of fight? Or?
Yeah, well, it was in my shop, and I sued them and lost. They were drug people. They were dealing drugs. They bought out the city. They bought out the whole system, and they cleaned my plow. Wow! And I was all bloody and all messed up, but they didn't have a scratch on them.
Yeah. Well, I love the idea with the project and reflect, and I love that. And before we wrap up, I want you to touch on this last idea. Define love and hate for us.
My father come up with a good one. He says love was ignorant, weak, narrow-minded, and over-emotional.
That's what love was?
That's what my father said love was. And I wish so much that I could say it back to my father now. I couldn't say it then. I didn't know then. I didn't have the background. I didn't have the experience. I would say to my father, what in the name of common sense do you think hate is? He was so hateful. He hated everything and everybody. He hated the federal government after the government gave him a job to feed his children. And he went around on his job and give the Bolshevik salute to all his buddies that he talked into going communist. And he was hateful from one end to the other on every issue, especially the government. He hated. And he hated everything and everybody. What do you think hate is? It is ignorant, it is weak, it is narrow-minded, and it is over-emotional. That's what hate is. So is jealousy. And he was the most jealous man. He was so jealous of me. He would take things that I do and brag around to people that he thought of it, and he did it.
You're kidding.
He did it. He was a liar. He was a cheat. He was a sneak, and he was a thief and a philanderer and an infidel. My own father. Mm-hmm. And I loved him. I can't help it. I used to try to shave him and help him. I gave him electric razor so he could shave himself a lot easier. Mm-hmm. I used to send him winged cigarettes. He loved winged cigarettes. That was his cigarette, wings. And I would find out a place to buy them, and every year I would send him a carton of winged cigarettes. And he never bought me anything but a bugle. He was a trumpet player, and he bought me a bugle. And he got me started on the trumpet. And I was a trumpet player in high school. Too. Yeah.
So I love the definition. So love. Define love again. Hey, we got hate. Would define the terms of love again one more time.
Love is ignorant, weak, narrow-minded, and over-emotional. Love is sacred. That's my version of love. It is sacred, and we have destroyed the definition of love through the advertising administration. They love everything. They love shoes. They love boots. They love mattresses. They love
waters
pillows.
Everything down, doesn't it?
Everything you could think of, they hang love on it, and that just kills the definition of love. That's not love. You don't love material things. Love is spiritual and sacred, and that's the only time you should use it. I use the word like.
More than love.
I like the word.
So you reserve the word love for the special things, it sounds like.
And like the auctioneer business, my chest is just about ready to give up.
Let's do it. Let's call it.
Okay.
Yep. Mike, I appreciate you coming by and sharing your story. I loved every minute of it. And until next time, all the best, health, wealth, and success.
Well, I'll think up of something and we'll run with it.
Next time, we'll do it.
Help the principal assembly. That's what I'm going to go after.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.